Morning. We are just outside Rita Woodoo, and I'm gonna head in and see how the daffodils are going, because on the lead up here they're just everywhere. It's amazing. So I'm curious how our little spot down near the fallen log is going. So that's where we're off to right now. Well, maybe I can show you real quick. I don't know how much you'll be able to see, sorry for this, but you can see if you look over in Lift Halt, just look how much yellow is happening down there. I'll even do a bit of a zoom. It's not going to be great images, but you can see it's just absolute daffodil carnage, which is great. So we're going to check out that little spot that we know has a ton and see how we're going down there. Daffodil Town is in full scale down here. That's quite pleasant. It makes me want to come down here and do a photo shoot in the middle of all of them, but I don't have anybody to plonk in there. But it is very nice. The tricky thing actually is getting in there without crushing everything, because as you can see it's somewhat of a carpet. So the other great news is that we can again cross at the fallen tree. After, what, almost 2 months worth of not being able to get over here. Obviously there were accessible ways from going around, but that was a bit of a pain. So this is very exciting and going to make me come over here a whole lot more. Oh, and I know I've been calling this fallen tree a lot of the time, and maybe it would feel like it made more sense to call it the stream or the flooding area or whatnot. But I've been calling it fallen tree because up to this point we hadn't had floods like last year and such. But this tree at some point, this is the one, had fallen over, producing this, which for a while was actually laid out. Spin you around. Get you level. It was actually laid out across here and you had to jump it for a month or two. Since then I've called it fallen tree, even though now that name makes less and less sense, but you know, just so you know the context of why I called this little dip that. Calling it the little dip might have been more sensible, but here we are. Okay, so walking along and we just crossed the fallen tree. There's interestingly all of these catkins. I mean, I don't really need to point to them, the whole screen is filled with them. And they fall on the path and they're quite huge. Definitely compared to the ones that I can see up on the tree. And what it's making me wonder is, have they fallen from a higher tree and they're a different kind? Or do they, when they fall, take on this, you know, do they sort of absorb water or whatnot and open up? I know pine cones will open up, and as far as I know catkins have some shared, I was going to say DNA, but properties with cones. So I don't know, because they're actually quite big. If I come down, like they're not dissimilar to sort of a finger length and width. Very fluffy. Almost you could mistake them for caterpillars if they were moving. But yeah, I don't know. I wonder if they're from one of these trees, one of these taller trees. Let me zoom out. So just over here we have some catkins hanging down that are smaller, which I wouldn't be surprised if they are more the hazel type ones or something in that nature, because the trees are a lot smaller. But then you have these taller trees here, and I'm wondering if they're from those, and whether those are some kind of willow or poplar, or I mean, I'm guessing they don't seem the right shape for poplar. I just don't know. As I've proved in the past, my tree knowledge not great, but perhaps when they start leafing up we can get more of an assessment on what trees they are. This area here, which is just between the fallen tree and what we will call the clearing in Rita Wudu, is actually going to be quite important in the next couple of months, because along here there's a lot of grass and flowers and whatnot. You can't see it yet, it's all still fairly dead, but this area really kind of grows up with a lot of different types of flowers and whatnot. And so along here, because there's not much tree cover as well, it just gets flooded with butterflies. So this is probably, judging from last year, going to be our butterfly patch to come look at them, because you get the nice combination of the ones coming out of the woods, because there are some that like to be in the woods, but also the ones that like to be out in the open on flowers and such. So yes, we will probably be returning here a fair amount, and maybe failing to catch some footage of butterflies. Now, I could be wrong, but this chap here is definitely, to me, showing signs that it's about to burst forth in flower for spring. I don't know what it is. It's an interestingly shaped tree, and I guess once the flowers pop out, I'll try and remember to revisit it, because it seems like it could be its own thing. Maybe it's one that we don't have a ton of. It could just be a smaller version of something else around here, but it's got a nice sort of shape and distinct look to it. But yeah, look at those buds. To me, that's about to puff out in white flowers, but I'll be happy to be surprised whatever it does. I've just noticed, I really should have noticed earlier, that the chiffchaffs are really chiff-chaffing. So whilst I may not have much footage of actual moving physical birds, the sounds are hard to ignore. If you don't know chiffchaffs, that's one there. It's going chiff-chaff, 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 chiff-chaff. They're one of the easiest ones to get your brain around if you're trying to learn bird songs. I think in some ways it's easiest to try and learn the ones that are most recognizable and that you can associate first, and then you can gradually, by process of elimination, build up your library of birds so that you can actually, when you're trying to learn the more tricky ones, you can just isolate the other ones. You can say, no, chiff-chaff, no, that's a blue tit, etc., etc., and then begin to learn them down. That's kind of what's worked for me, rather than just try and go through and sort of say, well, today I'm going to learn robins, because robins are a bit more tricky because they change up their songs. But yeah, for me, try and learn the ones that you can remember, get them nailed in your brain. You know, the pigeons are other good ones to get in your brain because they're pretty easy. Blue tits, great tits, usually pretty solid. So yeah, and once you get all those out of the way, you can go out and you can sort of think to yourself, okay, I hear a chiff-chaff, I hear a chaffinch. Chaffinches aren't too bad to get your head round, etc, etc, and you'll... Alright, turns out I was waffling so much there that I ran out of space on the phone, but you got my gist. Alright, onwards. So I was just wandering past Christmas Tree Row, which you can see down here, and I noticed some yellow at the end, and again, it's absolutely... I had no idea it was going to be so daffodil-y down here, but it's flooded. If you turn this way, I mean, look at it. It's just daffodils as far as the eyes can see, which I'll admit isn't very far. But it feels like they're all the way down this whole area, because if I spin you around to look down, this is the area we got lost in and accidentally found the chimney. Sorry, it goes a bit off kilter there. Let me try and straighten you up. But yeah, you can see even down this way, just daffodils as far as you can see. It's madness. I really would love to know how many are in here. I mean, obviously it's in the thousands, but how much higher than that does it go? I just don't know really, but it's very cool. They'll all be gone soon, of course, and then you'd have no idea that they'd ever been here because they go dormant and underground just as bulbs. They're a fascinating thing. You just don't know where they're going to be unless you know where they're going to be, and then they appear, absolutely take over everything. A few weeks later, it's like they were never there. So I suddenly had a curiosity talking about the daffodils and wondering to myself, obviously they come from bulbs, so how do you get more daffodils? You know, because when you want a lot of plants, they produce a ton of seeds, you spread the seed, they grow from that. Daffodils grow from bulbs, so that seems like a one-to-one thing, and I wasn't entirely sure how that works. Maybe you know. But I had a quick look, and it turns out that they will split their bulbs and get, I think it called them daughter bulbs, that then gradually become their own daffodils. So I guess they gradually split that way. Apparently they do a bit of seed related spreading as well, let's call it. But yeah, so I guess they have a couple ways. I suddenly thought to myself, how do they spread? You know, if there was just one daffodil, obviously there was a way. I wasn't sure what it was, but now I know. So they're a little distant, but maybe you can hear them. Apologies for the not quite as good video as you'd like, but look, a whole bunch of rooks, and I believe crows if you look over to the left there. Definitely rooks up front there, you can tell by those white beaks. I think in the in the background probably crows. There may be jackdaws as I'll have to check on. I mean, there's probably crows and jackdaws. I'm pretty sure I heard some jackdaw noises. The weird kind of ow, ow, ow that they do. But what's cool is this is just, let me show you. I will pop this up here. Might already be able to tell, even though this is blurry. They're all hanging out just in front of the mystery chimney of doom, just here, which we investigated a few weeks ago, and I felt was very spooky personally. And you know what makes things feel more spooky is when they're surrounded by corvids. So that's quite fun. Not sure why they've chosen this field in particular. Maybe they just know that this is a spooky area and they should be hanging out here. I couldn't tell you. You've got the old windmill in the background, which last time I was here was actually really quite creaky. Just up there. It's not running today for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know whether that's wind related or whether they just turn it off sometimes. I can't say it feels very windy, so maybe it's just not enough to make it go around. But yeah, you can see all of the various corvids and probably hear them a little bit. Just down, oh dear, focus problems, just down in front. So yeah, at least it's a little bit of bird activity. You can tell from what I just showed you through the scope, it's just not very stable, so I'm not really trusting the video I'm putting through there, but it gives you some idea anyway, doesn't it? I did have a bracket for attaching the phone to it, but you know, as phones change and they get bigger, these things don't work quite as well. And actually the cameras now are such a weight on the bracket that it actually drags the eyepiece out of alignment somewhat as well. That probably doesn't make much sense, but it's tricky to, let's get a bit more of a full shot here. It is tricky under those circumstances to actually get anything better than just hand holding it. We'll try, if I can, I will try and get something set up so that I can do better wildlife shots, because obviously that's one of the things that's very cool. I like looking at all the plants and whatnot, but I'd love to get more birds and animals. Of course, I pick all my stuff up, scope, microphones, and this chaffinch decides to just casually wander around here next to the road. Not really complaining, it's just funny. He seems so unbothered by me too. Oh, he's bothered by whoever that was. A more feisty chaffinch, perhaps? Anyway, we'll leave them to it.